The day I slept on a plastic chair at a 24-hour bus station was the same night my ex-wife posted photos from Bali with the man she told me not to worry about. Funny how life works. One minute, you're standing in a courtroom wearing the only suit you own, still hoping 20 years of loyalty might count for something. And the next, you're watching rain drip through a cracked terminal window while your entire life fits inside one torn duffel bag. I used to think betrayal sounded loud, like screaming, like slammed doors, like broken glass. But real betrayal? It sounds like a woman calmly asking for the house you built, while avoiding your eyes. Elias, Vanessa had said, smoothing invisible wrinkles from her designer blouse outside courtroom 4B. Don't make this harder than it needs to be. Harder. I remember staring at her like she was speaking another language. Because the woman standing in front of me, the woman with diamond earrings, I bought on our 10th anniversary, the woman whose nursing degree I worked double shifts to help pay for, was no longer the same person who once danced barefoot with me in our first apartment kitchen, over burnt rice and cheap wine. This version of Vanessa had sharper edges, sharper nails, sharper words, sharper lies. And standing 3 feet behind her was Brent Calloway, tall, perfect teeth, luxury watch. That smug, polished kind of confidence only men with inherited money seem to wear naturally. He wasn't her personal trainer anymore. Not now. Not when his hand rested casually on her lower back like he'd been waiting years to place it there. Stories like this don't just happen. They're built slowly. On silence, on pride, on all the little moments you convince yourself mean nothing. Until they mean everything. If you've ever ignored your instincts because love made you hopeful, then you already know how this begins. 3 years earlier, I was not a broken man. I was just tired. At 42, I worked maintenance engineering for the city transit system in West Chicago. Not glamorous, but stable. I fixed electrical systems on commuter rails, handled emergency breakdowns, and sometimes spent 16-hour nights, elbow-deep in grease, while politicians bragged about infrastructure, improvements they barely understood. I wasn't rich, but I was reliable. Every Friday, I brought home Vanessa's favorite coconut cake from Sanders Bakery on Pulaski. Every winter, I warmed her car before her morning shift. Every anniversary, I wrote her letters, real letters, folded by hand, because she once told me words mattered more than gifts. Back then, I believed her. Vanessa worked as a pediatric nurse. Beautiful, poised, magnetic. The kind of woman who could command a room without raising her voice. Patients loved her. Men noticed her. Women studied her. And me? I was the steady husband, the dependable one. I thought that was enough. We had one daughter, Naomi, who was 17 when everything started unraveling. Naomi was different from both of us. Quiet where Vanessa was polished. Observant where I was trusting. She had my mother's thoughtful eyes and this unnerving habit of noticing things adults thought they'd hidden. By junior year, she'd already developed a passion for architecture, sketching dream homes in spiral notebooks while her friends obsessed over TikTok trends. She was the best thing we ever made, which is probably why losing my marriage hurt. But nearly losing my daughter destroyed me. The first crack came disguised as ambition. Vanessa wanted more. That was the word she used. More travel, more experiences, more status. At first I understood. We'd spent years surviving, budgeting, sacrificing. I figured she deserved some freedom. Then more became criticism. You're too comfortable, Elias. You've stopped dreaming. Do you really plan to work that job forever? Funny thing about humiliation. It rarely starts as cruelty. Sometimes it starts as comparison. Brent entered our lives through Oakbrook Elite Fitness, the upscale gym Vanessa joined after losing 20 pounds and discovering Pilates. At first, she mentioned him casually. Brent says my posture's improving. Brent recommended this nutritionist. Brent's family owns commercial properties downtown. I didn't feel threatened. Why would I? I was her husband, the man who sat through labor contractions, the man who buried her mother, the man who stayed when she battled postpartum depression and barely recognized herself. I thought history mattered. I didn't realize some people treat loyalty like expired currency. The changes happened slowly. Her phone turned face down. Girls' nights multiplied. Perfume changed. Lingerie upgraded. Conversations shortened. And then came the gaslighting. That special kind of cruelty, designed to make sanity feel paranoid. You're insecure. Brent is just a friend. You really need therapy. Maybe I did need therapy. Because somehow, I kept apologizing for noticing. Naomi was the first person who said it out loud. Dad, I think Mom's lying. She said it one October evening while standing in the garage, holding a cardboard box of Halloween decorations. I froze. What makes you say that? Naomi hesitated the way children do when they're about to cross. A line they can't uncross. I saw her at Vitale's restaurant last Thursday. I frowned. With coworkers? She shook her head. No, with him. There are moments when your body hears truth before your brain accepts it. My chest tightened, but I forced a smile. Sweetheart, adults have business meetings. Naomi looked almost angry. Dad, she was holding his hand. I wish I could say I confronted Vanessa immediately. I didn't. Because denial can feel safer than devastation. Instead, I investigated quietly. Not because I was weak. Because I was terrified. Over the next month, I noticed charges on our joint card from places she'd never mentioned. Boutique hotels, luxury spas, expensive restaurants nowhere near the hospital. Then came the final confirmation. December 14th. Snowstorm. Night shift cancellation. I came home early. Her car was in the driveway. So was Brent's black Range Rover. I remember gripping the steering wheel so hard my wedding ring cut into my finger. You always imagine rage in moments like that. But what I felt first was grief. The house looked normal from outside. Christmas lights Naomi had hung, frost on the mailbox, cinnamon candle glowing through the living room window. Normal. Inside, my marriage was dying upstairs. I walked in quietly, and there it was. Laughter. Her laughter. Not the polite laugh she gave neighbors. Not the exhausted laugh from hospital stories. This was intimate. Unfiltered, young. By the time I reached our bedroom door, I already knew. Some betrayals don't need visual confirmation. But I opened it anyway. I won't describe everything. Not because I can't. Because some memories don't deserve resurrection. I'll only say this. Nothing prepares you for seeing someone you built. A life with look inconvenienced by your heartbreak. Vanessa didn't cry. Didn't panic. Didn't beg. She just pulled the sheet over herself and sighed. Elias, this isn't what it looks like. Brent actually laughed. Laughed. And in that moment, something ancient inside me nearly broke loose. But then Naomi's face flashed in my mind. So instead of violence, I walked away. That decision saved my life and nearly cost me everything. The divorce was surgical. Vanessa had prepared long before I knew I was bleeding. Hidden accounts, strategic documentation, claims that I was emotionally unstable, accusations that my long work hours created emotional abandonment. Brent's family connections bought her better attorneys. By the time the dust settled, I lost the house in a legal technicality involving refinancing paperwork. I'd signed during one of Naomi's tuition emergencies. I lost savings. I lost reputation. I nearly lost Naomi too, until the judge allowed her to choose where she lived. I'll never forget Vanessa's face when Naomi said, I'm staying with Dad. For the first time, Vanessa looked wounded. But even then, I don't think it was maternal heartbreak. I think it was ego. Because Naomi choosing me shattered the narrative. Vanessa had crafted that I was the burden, and she was escaping one. Still, justice wasn't immediate. Naomi left for college in Seattle 8 months later on scholarship, and I was proud enough to cry alone. But pride doesn't pay rent. Without the house settlement, I spiraled financially. Legal fees crushed me. Credit collapsed. I rented a basement room from an elderly Korean widower named Mr. Han, who charged me little but taught me something priceless. Rock bottom, he once said, while serving me instant ramen at 2 a.m., is good foundation. If you build correctly. At first, I hated him for saying it. Then I started listening. Mr. Han had immigrated with nothing after the IMF. Crisis destroyed his textile business in Seoul. By 68, he owned 3 laundromats, 2 rental properties, and more wisdom than every self-help book I'd ever wasted money on. He noticed my habits, my bitterness, my exhaustion, my victimhood. "You still think divorce ruined you," he said one morning. "It did." He shook his head. "No. Your belief that your best life was behind you ruined you." I didn't answer, because deep down, I feared he was right. So I changed one thing, then another. I stopped drinking, started studying, learned commercial electrical contracting at advanced certification level, picked up side work, saved obsessively. For 2 years, while Vanessa flaunted vacations online and Brent paraded her through charity galas, I disappeared. Not socially, strategically. I became invisible. And invisible men learn things flashy men never do. I learned property undervaluation, urban redevelopment, commercial code loopholes, tax lines. Turns out, the same city that underpaid me for years was quietly rezoning, neglected industrial corridors, and one condemned warehouse district on the south side was about to become gold. The first property I bought wasn't impressive. It smelled like mold and rust, broken windows, copper theft, graffiti. But I saw what others didn't. Potential. Mr. Han co-signed my first private lender introduction. "Don't chase revenge," he warned. "Build something so meaningful revenge becomes irrelevant." I wish I could tell you success happened quickly. It didn't. I failed hard. Contractors scammed me. Permits delayed me. Banks rejected me. But pain had made me disciplined. And discipline, unlike motivation, survives humiliation. By year 3, that first warehouse became a mixed-use commercial space. Then another. Then another. I built affordable live work lofts for artists, small businesses, and immigrant-owned startups. I remembered what struggle felt like. So I built for strugglers. Local news called it community-conscious redevelopment. I just called it survival with purpose. And then, on a rainy Thursday in March, I bought a mansion. Not because I cared about luxury, because it overlooked the very skyline I once stared at from a bus station bench. It wasn't just a home, it was evidence. 6 bedrooms, iron gates, lake-facing glass walls, a library Naomi designed herself during graduate school. She cried when she saw it. "Dad, you actually did it." "No, I rebuilt it. Myself. And for the first time in years, I believed the worst thing that ever happened to me had also introduced me to the man I was supposed to become. That should have been the end. But life, especially life with unresolved ghosts, rarely ends when you expect. Because 3 weeks after, Naomi moved into her new architectural fellowship in Boston. At exactly 8:43 p.m. on a storm-heavy Sunday, someone knocked on my front door. Not the security gate. The front door, which meant they'd been let in. I opened it expecting a delivery issue. Instead, I saw Vanessa. Older, softer, drenched in rain. Gone were the polished socialite edges. Gone was the practiced arrogance. Mascara streaked, hands trembling, designer coat wrinkled, and standing beside her was a little boy, maybe 6 years old, silent, wide-eyed, clutching a dinosaur backpack. For a second, I genuinely wondered if I was hallucinating. Then Vanessa looked up at me, not like a conqueror, not like an ex-wife, like someone standing at the grave of every decision she thought would save her. "Elias," she whispered. Her voice cracked, and what she said next made me realize Brent Calloway's betrayal of me was nothing compared to what he'd done to her. "Brent's gone." 3 words. That's all Vanessa said at first. Not hello, not I'm sorry, not even please. Just those 2 broken syllables and one final truth, spoken like her lungs had barely survived carrying it. Behind her, thunder rolled across Lake Michigan, low and distant, the kind that sounds less like weather and more like memory. I stared at her, at the woman who once dismantled my life with legal precision, now standing barefoot on imported stone, soaked to the skin, clutching a child who looked too exhausted to cry. And the strangest part? I didn't feel triumph. Not immediately. I felt confusion. Because revenge fantasies are clean, cinematic, satisfying. Reality rarely is. The 6-year-old shifted closer to her leg. He had Brent's eyes. That same pale arrogance, except on a child, it didn't look arrogant. It looked scared. "Who is this?" I asked. Vanessa swallowed hard. "My son, Caleb." Her son. "Not ours." The reality landed quietly, like ash. I looked down at the boy. He stared back the way. Children do when they know adults are speaking in codes. They're too young to decipher, but old enough to fear. And then, before I could stop myself, I stepped aside. "Come in." Vanessa blinked. I'm still not sure which shocked her more, that I opened the door or that I didn't slam it. Inside, warmth wrapped around them instantly. My house manager, Mrs. Alvarez, appeared from the West Hall, took one look at Vanessa's condition, and silently brought towels. No questions. That's something wealth taught me. Real dignity often sounds like restraint. Caleb stood frozen beneath the chandelier, water pooling beneath his sneakers. He looked around the foyer. The curved staircase, vaulted ceilings, marble floors, not with envy, but disbelief. Like this kind of life only existed in cartoons. And maybe for him, until that night, it had. I led them to the kitchen. Not the formal dining room, not the sitting lounge. The kitchen. Because despite everything, kitchens had always been where our real life happened. Vanessa noticed that too. For one suspended second, her eyes drifted to the oversized oak island where Naomi had once done algebra homework while I grilled cheese sandwiches. I saw recognition hurt her. Good. Mrs. Alvarez made hot chocolate for Caleb. Tea for Vanessa. Black coffee for me. No one touched anything for almost 5 minutes. Then Caleb finally whispered, "Mom, are we safe here?" Safe. The question hit harder than accusation ever could. Vanessa broke. Not elegantly. Not dramatically. She folded inward, like years of denial had finally collapsed, under one honest question, from the only person she had left. "Yes," she whispered, grabbing his hand. "Yes, baby. I think so." "Think so?" I sat down slowly. "What happened?" And this is where the story changed. Because I'd spent years imagining Vanessa's downfall would come from vanity, or karma, or scandal, or Brent cheating, I never imagined it would come from something far darker. Brent Calloway hadn't just been unfaithful. He'd been fraudulent. Not in the casual rich man tax evasion way. In the federal investigation, shell company, asset concealment, investor theft kind of way. For years, Brent had used his family's polished real estate empire as camouflage for laundering money through fabricated redevelopment projects, inflated nonprofit donations, and offshore accounts. Vanessa didn't know at first. At least, not the full extent. When she married Brent 18 months after our divorce, she thought she'd leveled up. His penthouse, private schools, Aspen trips, galas, connections. Everything she once implied I couldn't give her. But luxury built on deception has expiration dates. 2 years in, federal subpoenas began surfacing. Then audits. Then frozen accounts. Then disappeared business partners. Then, one Tuesday morning, while Vanessa was driving Caleb to Montessori, Brent vanished. Private jet. Cayman accounts. Mistress in Argentina, apparently. Gone. He left behind lawsuits, debt, seized properties, and one wife whose name was legally attached to enough shared assets to become collateral damage. "Why are you here?" I asked quietly. It wasn't cruel. It was necessary. Vanessa looked down at her untouched tea. Because everyone else disappeared. There it was. No poetic redemption. No dramatic speech. Just consequence. Her country club friends stopped answering. Brent's lawyers abandoned her. His family publicly distanced themselves. Her accounts were frozen pending investigation. Their mansion was seized. And perhaps worst of all, people treated her exactly the way she once treated me. Like proximity to failure was contagious. "Naomi gave me your address," she said softly. That surprised me. "Naomi knows?" Vanessa nodded. "She didn't tell me to come." A pause. She just said, "If Dad opens the door, don't waste it." I nearly smiled. That sounded exactly like my daughter. Wise enough not to interfere, sharp enough to issue warning through grace. I leaned back in my chair. You expect me to fix this? Vanessa's eyes filled instantly. No. That answer, I believed. I know I don't deserve that. For the first time all night, she looked directly at me. I came because Caleb didn't deserve a shelter. That changed everything. Because adults can weaponize pride. Children can't. I wish I could tell you I forgave her that night. I didn't. Forgiveness isn't a lightning strike. It's architecture. Slow. Intentional. Load-bearing. So instead, I made a decision based not on history, but on who I had become. You can stay here for 72 hours, I said. Vanessa nodded before I even finished. Long enough for me to get legal. Counsel involved, and figure out options for Caleb. She burst into tears, not because 72 hours was generous, because she'd arrived expecting less. That first night, Caleb slept in the guest wing beneath a weighted blanket. Mrs. Alvarez found in storage. Vanessa barely slept at all. I know because around 2:14 a.m., I found her standing alone in the library Naomi designed, staring at the wall where I'd framed my first warehouse deed. You kept everything, she whispered. No, I said. I rebuilt. She nodded like the distinction mattered. Because it did. Over the next 3 days, truth surfaced like wreckage after a storm. Vanessa had sold pieces of herself long before Brent stole the rest. She admitted something I never expected. I didn't leave you because you were failing. I said nothing. She continued. I left because you knew me before I started pretending. That one landed deep, because beneath her ambition, beneath the status hunger, beneath the cruelty, was shame. She hadn't just wanted wealth. She wanted reinvention. The man who knew her from food stamps, student debt, postpartum breakdowns, and coupon-clipped anniversaries, was living proof she hadn't always been who she was pretending to become. Brent, on the other hand, offered fantasy. And fantasy is seductive when truth feels ordinary. You loved being seen with him, I said. Vanessa's voice cracked. No, I loved who I thought it made me. There's a difference, and understanding that difference may have saved me from hating her forever. By week 2, my attorneys uncovered enough evidence to separate Vanessa from Brent's criminal liability if she cooperated fully. I didn't do it for her. I did it because Caleb deserved one honest adult in his corner. And maybe because Naomi was watching. She flew in that weekend. I'll never forget the moment she walked through my front door, saw her mother sleeping on the couch under one of our old knitted blankets, and simply stood there. No yelling, no cinematic confrontation. Just a long, quiet exhale. Then Naomi covered her with the blanket properly. That's my daughter. Not soft. Strong. There's a difference. Later that night, Naomi and I sat on the back terrace overlooking the lake. Do you still love her? She asked. Children, even grown ones, ask questions sharper than therapists. I took my time. No, I said honestly. Then added, but I don't need her to suffer for me to feel whole. Naomi smiled through tears. Good, she whispered, because that was the real victory. Not wealth, not the mansion, not Brent's downfall. Wholeness. Months passed. Vanessa entered witness. Protection cooperation related to Brent's financial crimes. She got a modest nursing job under supervision. Rented a small townhouse. Started over. Actually started over. No designer armor. No image obsession. Just work. Motherhood. Humility. We never became lovers again. Some bridges should remain history. But hostility? That faded. Not because pain vanished, but because pain finally stopped leading. Caleb, strangely enough, became part of my life in small ways. I taught him how to fish, how to wire a lamp, how to shake hands properly. Not because he was mine, because broken boys deserve examples too. And Brent? He was arrested 14 months later in Spain. Extradited. Convicted. Ruined. Turns out men who build empires on illusion eventually forget illusion has borders. The night his sentencing became public, Vanessa called me. Not crying. Not celebrating. Just quiet. I used to think losing you was my freedom, she said. I looked out across the city I once thought had buried me. And now? A long pause. Now I know it was my first bankruptcy. Emotional, moral, spiritual. For once, she understood. Years later, people still ask how I handled it, how I opened the door, how I helped, how I didn't become consumed by revenge. The answer disappoints people sometimes, because revenge is dramatic. But rebuilding is divine. You see, success didn't come from proving Vanessa wrong. It came from finally proving my brokenness wrong. Rock bottom wasn't where my story ended. It was where the lie ended. The lie that being abandoned meant being worthless. The lie that betrayal erased value. The lie that someone else's blindness defined my future. No. Sometimes the people who leave you, the ones who humiliate you, the ones who gamble your love for temporary glitter, they don't destroy your life. They accidentally clear the construction site. And from that ruin, you build something they can't recognize. Not because you became colder, because you became clearer. Vanessa once traded a faithful man for a fantasy. 3 years later, fantasy collapsed, and she knocked on the door of something real. And me? I finally understood this. Sometimes betrayal doesn't destroy you. It introduces you to the person pain was preparing you to become. If this story made you think differently, let me know.